Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I will be doing something that I want to make a regular feature here on this channel, and that is suggesting new REs or talent changes for Project Ascension. There will be some background footage of me doing some heroics or raid attempts while I go over these REs that I have come up with. I will leave a link in the description below to my Discord page if you want to come over and discuss this or any other videos. Why don't we jump in game? I will see you there and in the next video. Let's go. Random enchant number 1, Edge and Stone, will be a blue quality random enchant. Your sharpening stones and weight stones applied to weapons have 50% increased effect. What is the idea behind this RE? Well, it might be a little selfish, but personally I am sick of using poisons on every one of my melee builds. I understand that builds like Titan's Grip or Spell Power melee hybrids don't use them, but in almost every scenario besides those, I have seen poisons vastly out DPS any other temporary weapon enchant you can use. For my slam build, it averages about 20% of my total damage, and for something to do that much for the low investment of 8 talent points and 6 RE slots, I think even after the nerf they are still too universally strong. I feel like a total bonus of 150% would bring these blacksmith only temporary weapon enchants up to a similar power level of poisons, but unless they either change the way poisons scale or what specs can use them, they will still remain the king of temporary weapon enchants. The best thing about playing a pure physical damage based melee build is you focus on adding as much flat weapon damage and attack power as you can. Really makes you feel like a beast. When looking at tier 4 weapons versus tier 6 weapons, what is the main difference? Mostly the damage values, secondary stats being a slight power gain overall. For class fantasy and flavor, I think making the melee boys and girls out there really go all in on physical damage would open up more diversity than we have right now. Hell, the legendary RE we have right now, the Tools of War, only resets the stacks if you're using a non-physical damage-based ability. Poisons don't reset it because technically you aren't the one doing the non-physical damage, but you are the one who applied it to your weapons, so I think it's just kind of counterintuitive. Random enchant number 2, legendary, Aorta Perforation. When your Rend, Rupture, Deep Wounds, and Garrote abilities deal damage, you gain a stack of Aorta Perforation. At 30 stacks, this effect and all bleeds on the target are consumed and applies a large bleed to the target that lasts 12 seconds. Each stack of Aorta Perforation is equivalent to 25% of the damage dealt by these abilities. Right now, in the current state of the game, bleeds are kind of a joke as far as melee DPS is concerned. I have tried for months and months to make bleeds even remotely powerful, but the scaling just really isn't there for it right now. In other games like Path of Exile or Diablo or Grim Dawn, damage over time builds are among my favorites. They're almost never top of the tier list as far as power level is concerned, but I always find myself gravitating towards them for some reason, and I'd like to see them stronger here in Ascension. In my testing across all 4 of the abilities, an average damage of around 700 per tick is what I have personally seen. Each ability obviously does varying amounts of damage, but in a 5-minute patchwork test, that was about an average of the 4 abilities combined. So at 30 stacks given that value, the bleed would do a total of 5,250 damage in my current gear over 12 seconds, which would equate to 437.5 damage per second on average. This would be a fairly strong bleed and would scale well with gear, especially if it could crit. Plus the inherent balancing mechanism of having to restack your bleeds after every time this procs would help it keep it in line for future raids. Random enchant number 3 will be an epic persistence principle. For every 500 mana you regenerate, you gain 1 extra spell power, stacking up to 100. After you regenerate 50,000 total mana, you gain 50% spell haste for 7 seconds. Spells cost no mana during this effect. Mana gaining effects do not count towards the total mana regenerated. It's probably pretty clear by the design of this RE how I feel about the spell Life Tap. I am so sick of this ability. It was a cool niche ability to help Warlocks stay competitive in raids back in early vanilla, but now that every single person has access to it, it has essentially become the glue that holds casters and healers together. So why would anyone want to spend RE slots and talent points on mana regen when you can just Life Tap, right? It's more efficient than anything you can do right now for mana gain during a fight, outside of say Innervate or Evocation. During the earlier parts of Vanilla and TBC, there was the inherent balancing mechanism for caster DPSs to have mana problems that would force people to take time off during fights to regenerate some mana. Traditionally, casters always could do more DPS than melee, but they were more or less in check due to the fact that their mana bar was a concern. Now that everyone essentially has infinite mana due to life tap, casters are getting kind of outscaled compared to melee classes, and I think this would help bring those back in line a little bit more. The goal of this RE is to encourage people to build heavily into mana regen, whether you are a DPS or a healer. The gameplay addition of having that 7-second window to just nuke the boss as hard as possible or blast your raid with a bunch of heals during a heavy AoE portion of a fight would be a really fun and engaging mechanic. I vote that we either remove life tap, limit its uses for the specs, or put a 3-minute cooldown on it if an idea like this isn't very viable. In a quote-unquote classless WoW environment, having a spell that nearly every person with a mana bar clings to is getting really boring for me. Not to mention, and it's a little bit more prevalent in heroics rather than in raids, I've seen people life tap at the most inopportune time, take a huge AoE hit, and then die. I think this would help eliminate some of those oopsie moments and put a lot less stress on your healers going through the expansion. So what do you think of the design of these REs? Would they be interesting enough for you to want to try them out? Let me know down in the comments of the video. I'd really love to hear people's feedback on this subject. Thank you again for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.